Hi, I'm Thomas. Welcome to the Parachute Advice Podcast. My life has taken a lot of twists and turns, and on this podcast, I will dive into those experiences. The goal is to help everyone listening learn from my experiences and hopefully avoid some of the mistakes I've made. Hi, welcome to today's episode of the Parachute Advice Podcast. I'm your host, Thomas. Today I want to discuss all the surprises, both good and bad, I discovered post-weight loss. I feel like a stuck record when I say this, but this is just my experiences and nothing else. Everyone's experiences with massive weight loss or any other major lifestyle change will vary. I also want to say, if you hear a story about something you may have done or said in one form or another, know that I completely understand it was never meant to be a negative. As the line goes, you don't understand someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes. There's even things that I've experienced that I myself have done in the past with no idea how it came across the other person until now. I can't even begin to tell you all of the eye-opening things that I've experienced, hence the purpose of this show and episode. If you've never been through massive weight loss, you have no idea how much it impacts your life. I had no idea until I went through it. I'll share this crazy story just to express how surreal things have been. I was just at a friend's daughter's birthday party. His dad was there. I've known him for years. Hell, we're even Facebook friends. But I hadn't seen him in person since all the weight loss. I said hi when I saw him. Was a bit surprised by the rather distant reply, but I just wrote it off to being a family party and a lot going on. It wasn't until about an hour later when I walked up to him and two of my other friends talking, and his father made an off comment about me, something to the effect of, "I'm surprised Thomas isn't here." It was that moment his son said, "Dad, he's standing right there," and pointed to me. Because of COVID, this happens very regularly. I still struggle with this whole new identity thing every day. It's very weird to think that I can go to events with tons of people I haven't seen since the weight loss and can just stand there and observe things with no one knowing who I am. One of the biggest struggles I work on every day is Imposter Syndrome. This is defined as the persistent inability to believe that one's success is deserved or has been legitimately achieved as a result of one's own efforts or skills. I would say once a week I have someone tell me how inspiring what I did is, and then ask me how I did it. Like I'll share some magical secret. Well, if you've been listening through all the episodes up to this point, you know I don't have a magic secret, and I'm not some sort of hero. I'm just a guy who is struggling and wanted to make a change in his life. It's great if I inspire someone, and the info I share can change someone's life, but at times it's overwhelming to say the least. I still haven't fully wrapped my head around what I've accomplished. Let's start off with all the great things that I've discovered. First off, you're going to feel great. I can't tell you how good I started to feel as the weight came off. I had listened to people bitch my whole life as they got older about how they felt worse each year, so I just assumed every year I got heavier, it was my age and just part of the slow climb towards the end. Guess what? That's total BS. Yes, as you get older, issues will arise. We've all been using the same body for our whole life. To that point, I'm reminded of a story Warren Buffett shares with people all the time. The story he tells goes like this. When I was 16, I had just two things on my mind, girls and cars. I wasn't very good with girls, so I thought about cars. I thought about girls too, but I had more luck with cars. Let's say that when I turned 16, a genie had appeared to me, and that genie said, "Warren, I'm going to give you the car of your choice. It'll be here tomorrow morning with a big bow tie on it, brand new, and it's all yours." Having heard all the genie stories, I would say, "What's the catch?" And the genie would answer, "There's only one catch. This is the last car you're ever going to get in your life, so it's got to last a lifetime." If that had happened, I would have picked out that car. But can you imagine knowing it had to last a lifetime? What I would do with it? I would read the manual about 5 times. I would always keep it garaged. If there was the least little dent or scratch, I'd have it fixed right away because I wouldn't want it rusting. I would baby that car because it would have to last a lifetime. That's exactly the position you are in concerning your mind and body. You only get one mind and one body, and it's got to last a lifetime. Now, it's very easy to let them ride for many years, but if you don't take care of that mind and that body, they'll be a wreck 40 years later, just like the car would be. It's what you do right now, today, that determines how your mind and body will operate 10, 20, 30 years from now. I think about that idea every day now. I always suspected. Hell, I knew I had health issues related to my weight. For example, sleep apnea. I was pretty confident I had it as an issue and knew how serious it was, but it was one of those things that I just ignored. I could tell based on the articles I had read, I struggled to breathe at night, especially if I laid flat on my back. Hell, I got comments all the time when I would share a hotel room with friends or when I lived with my sister about how loud I snored, and at times they could hear me kind of gasping in my sleep, especially after a heavy night of drinking and smoking. Not surprising since I was 360 pounds, a lot of that weight was pushing on my chest every night. Plus, my neck was nearly 20 inches around. Again, additional weight pushing on my throat. Then, one night, months after starting the weight loss plan, I was laying in bed and fell asleep, and I woke up in the middle of the night and noticed I was laying on my back and felt great. I suddenly started to notice I was sleeping better. I wasn't waking up with a dry mouth from mouth breathing. I suddenly didn't get thirsty and have to get up for water in the middle of the night. I was waking up feeling more rested. That was just my sleep that improved. Next was just moving around and walking became easier. I work at a factory that covers 50 acres and 1.5 million square feet under roof, and there are times I had to walk from one end of campus to the other repeatedly in the course of a day. Do we have golf carts? Yes, but even at my heaviest, I vowed I would never use one to avoid the effort to walk. I felt that the day I did that was the day it was over. My weight would just balloon from there. But I'll tell you, there were times it was not easy. God, my feet would hurt, my knees would too. I think every day since losing that weight, what it would be like to strap even half that weight I lost back on and carry it around through the course of a day. Think about suddenly waking up and being told you had to carry 2 50-pound bags of rock salt with you everywhere you went. What's even crazier is that's only half the weight I lost. Now, I honestly look forward to getting walks in every day when I'm at the plant. Another obvious side effect is I fit better in seats at events. I can't believe how much more comfortable going to concerts and stadiums are. I don't worry anymore if I'll get the aisle seat or if I'll spread over the armrests into the seat next to me. Think about this. I am physically over 14 inches narrower. Frankly, it's probably closer to 20 plus inches. Considering most stadium seats are 18 to 22 inches wide, that size change for me has made a huge difference. Just moving around in the world is easier. That physical size change I've made makes everything different. From where I sit in a restaurant to how I feel at a crowded bar seat. For all of you who have been as big as I was or still are, know just how terrifying a booth at a restaurant can be. I would often try to be the first person there for the reservation so I could request a table, but even that would suck in a packed restaurant. Hell, even the size of stalls in public bathrooms feel huge now. Getting in and out of my car or sitting in it for extended periods of time is even better. I drive a subcompact SUV and it was always a bit tight, but I made it work because I'm cheap and didn't want to spend more on a car. Now, it's a pleasure to drive. Let's talk about clothes. This one is huge, especially for a guy as cheap as me. I used to have to shop exclusively at the big and tall store for my nice clothes, and while the quality is great, the prices suck. I once spent over $600 on a suit for a wedding I was going to be in just to make sure I got the correct color, when everyone else in the wedding party was able to go to Joseph A. Banks for a $199 suit. Yeah, more and more places carry larger sizes, but they're still not easy to find. I oftentimes fell into that sweet spot where everyone who is bigger seems to be. I would go to the store and they would have 2XL or 5XL, but almost always out of the 2 in between. I'll be honest, that was a big one for me when I started to lose weight. I had just bought a new wardrobe for my new job and it pained me knowing that 3XL wasn't cutting it anymore for sizes. I had to start buying 4XL. I had shirts that I had just gotten 2 years earlier in 3XL that weren't fitting anymore. Now, I can walk into any Target, Walmart, or TJ Maxx and get great clothes for a great price. I can't explain it now, but I care a lot more about what I wear. I want to look good when I go out. I just care more about my appearance. While I don't feel any more confident, I think this mindset gives others the impression you are. And frankly, when it comes to confidence, it's less about how you feel and more about how you're perceived. The one vain thing I started is wearing more fitted stuff. I want people to see that I lost the weight. Yes, it's clearly obvious I lost 200 pounds, but I want to make sure that people notice. I didn't work this hard to have it go unnoticed. I laugh. Because when you lose 200 pounds between seeing people thanks to COVID, it's hard for them to not notice. So I do have that going for me. One thing I forget all the time, but I've gotten better at, is when I run into people I haven't seen in a while. I have to think, when was the last time I saw them and what did I weigh? More and more often, I have to reintroduce myself. Similar to the story I told to start today's episode, I had a similar one at work. An engineer who I had worked with for 2 years, had not met in person with since losing the weight, stopped by my office and asked where Thomas was. I said, "That's me." He said, "No, the Thomas who used to sit in this office." I laughed and said, "That's me," and then explained what had happened. One issue I still have is I have a long torso in comparison to my height, which makes finding shirts that I can tuck in hard at times, especially if I'm trying for a more fitted look. I think one of the biggest shocks when I was shopping for clothes was looking for dress shirts that weren't baggy. I went to the big and tall store hoping for a tall that would work. Shockingly, I discovered they don't carry sizes small enough for me anymore. I had to resort to buying things I never thought I would. I bought a slim fit shirt just to make sure it wasn't too baggy. Again, I still struggle with thinking I don't look fat. All of us who are there or still there know the struggle. I wouldn't necessarily it's body dysmorphia as much as just having been one state for so long, it's hard to change my mindset. I still worry about things like, what if this shirt's too short and I reach up? Will my belly hang out? Will my pants be too tight in the thighs? Or should I get a size bigger in case I gain more weight? Struggles I've had over the years with my weight. It took me a good 6 months to a year to figure out what I was comfortable in and what looked good on me. A lot of this came from venturing outside my comfort zone in clothes, and then you'd hear comments, "Hey, that shirt looks great," or "Wow, nice outfit," and you learn what looks good to others. As a result, you then feel more comfortable in those new clothes. I can tell you this, my sister is certainly glad she doesn't get the constant texts with pictures asking, "How does this look?" That was a fairly frequent occurrence for a while I was relearning what worked. It didn't help for a long period of time you couldn't try clothes on at the store due to COVID. The compliments and comments about how good I look in new outfits are nice, but at the same time, I'm still not comfortable with them. I think a lot of this goes back to when I was overweight. When you're overweight, you just don't want people to notice you because they're rarely noticing you for how good you look. If you haven't been overweight, it's hard to understand, but the goal for most people in that situation is to be invisible because in your mind, then no one notices your weight. This is ridiculous. Hell, take the classic fear of going shirtless at the pool or beach. Like that skin-tight, water-soaked t-shirt was hiding your size? I laughed the first time I heard it described that way on a podcast, but it's so true. You're not hiding anything. I get a little more comfortable with each day, but it's definitely going slowly. It's one of the big reasons I started this podcast. I just wanted everything out there. All my fears, struggles, and insecurities. I wanted to share my story with everyone and help them in any way I can by sharing openly what I've been through and learned, while at the same time letting others who have not been in our situation know what we struggle with every day when overweight or after losing a ton of weight. For each of you going through these struggles, just know that you are not alone. Let's discuss general health. As you can imagine, it's great now. I eliminated a ton of medication. I still take a small dose of a cholesterol statin to make sure that my numbers stay in perfect range due to my family's history of heart disease. And I take a little bit of a blood pressure medication just to make sure because my family also has a history of high blood pressure that's more genetic than weight-based. But I've seen my resting heart rate, as calculated by my Fitbit, get as low as 47, and it usually sits between 48 and 50 now. I'm now excited to get on the scale when I go to see my doctor. It's no longer a horrible dread to see how high the number's gotten, but instead to see if I've stayed stable or lost a little weight. I did give my doctor's nurse a bit of a scare a while back, being the classic smartass. She noticed in the 6 months since my last visit, I was down another 60 pounds. She immediately asked, "Did you know you lost weight?" I looked at her and said, "No, why? Did I?" She said, "Yeah, 60 pounds. And I replied, "Oh, interesting." At which point she started to feverishly type notes into the computer. When I stopped her and said, "Yeah, I know. I was just screwing around. I'm losing weight on purpose." Needless to say, she was not as amused as I was. To that point, going to the doctor for my annual wellness exam is no longer stressful. I know they mean well, and I'm lucky to have a great doctor now. But several in the past just had terrible bedside manner. When you're as overweight as I was, I hated having to listen to the annual lecture. Like I don't know that I'm unhealthy? Like somehow the lecture is going to suddenly change things? Now, I find myself spending more time talking with my doctor about how I lost the weight and ideas that he can share with other patients. Another big one is I suffer from psoriasis. I was diagnosed with this when I was 20 years old. It all started as a small spot on my forehead and then quickly spread to a large portion of my body. At one point, it was very severe. For those of you who have never heard of it, psoriasis is a skin disease that causes red, itchy, scaly patches, most commonly on the knees, elbows, torso, and scalp. Psoriasis is a common long-term chronic disease with no cure. It tends to go through cycles, flaring for weeks or months, then subsiding for a while, or going into remission. Well, as I lost the weight, I noticed it get better and better, month over month, and now I'm to the point where it's virtually gone. I do take a very costly medication to treat it and have for years, but it had sat at a point of okay for a long period of time before the weight loss started. While no clear clinical studies have shown the connection, my dermatologist said he's seen and heard of cases clearing up drastically when massive weight loss happens, likely due to the fact that psoriasis is an autoimmune disease, and your overall physical health and diet is shown to have a major impact on autoimmune diseases of this type. Now let's talk about something I think is the hardest part, because it's a positive that brings up a lot of negative things too. You will get more attention and you will feel more popular because frankly you will be. When you lose a large amount of weight, people will treat you more positively. One of my really good friends from college and I would joke how in corporate America there was a type that seemed to move up faster. We would call them the GQ looking bastards. It was so clear when you walked into a room of recent college recruits to our company's leadership development program. Well, now, to some degree, I'm on the other side and it turns out it is true. Why do I say this is a negative? Well, twofold. Think about all the things and success I may have missed out on while I was overweight. And second, that the bias people seem to have towards overweight or less attractive people and the impact it has on their lives. To that point, I can't tell you how many people now want to set me up with their friends or friends of friends or some person's sister's cousin. I work every day to remind myself that no one means to hurt you. And really, it's my interpretation of their words that I'm struggling with. Besides, I'm single not just because I was overweight. I'm awkward as hell when it comes to dating. Just not something I've ever been great at. I have been single so long now that I don't even think I can wrap my head around trying to date. Not to say I'm against it, but for me at this point, it would be a major lifestyle change. I appreciate all the interest in setting me up, but as the last remaining single friend, too often everyone makes this awkward as hell, like it's some giant group project. If you ever have interest to set your friend up with someone, here's some advice from the single person. Just have an event or do an activity. Invite everyone to it, and simply individually mention each of those people. Hey, I think you might hit it off with this person, and leave it at that. Don't create a giant thing out of it. To that point, if dating and meeting your significant other is your reason for weight loss, there's a very good chance that the weight loss isn't going to fix that. This is probably a bigger issue. As I mentioned, it's clear for me it was more than physical appearance. I've been on plenty of dates using apps where looks are the initial impression to have it go great until we meet in person. Again, like I said earlier, I'm awkward as hell when it comes to dating, so not a shock there that dates don't go well. Let me be clear when I say this. Weight loss is not a cure for mental health issues in general. If you're unhappy, depressed, or lack confidence while overweight, none of those insecurities vanish when you lose weight. Internal issues can't be fixed by external changes. They can be helped, but not solved. Yes, it's possible that losing weight will help, but you need to work on those as separate issues as well. It can help, but as someone who at times can be awkward, filled with anxiety, and get depressed at times, it was not any less when I lost the weight. That said, it did help from the aspect of one less variable in the equation. The weight loss has really helped me dial in on things I need to work on besides my weight now. And I can assure you, I didn't suddenly become the ladies' man because I lost all the weight. If you ask any of my friends, they can certainly attest to that. You still need confidence in yourself and who you are to be successful. Take podcaster and comedian Stavros Halkias. I hope I pronounced his last name right, as a great example of weight having nothing to do with success or confidence. If you've never seen him, Google a picture of him. There are plenty other examples of people out there who don't fit the traditional looks model who are very successful. That said, I don't know any of them personally, so I can only base my assessments on their public personas. As we all know, public personas can be very different from real life. Now let's talk about a hard one. Your friends are going to look at you differently. I don't think anyone does it out of hurtfulness, but it can be hurtful at times. I've had multiple people say something to me in one form or another over the last year that I find interesting. I'm paraphrasing this, but it's to the effect of, I was friends with you before and will be your friend now. What makes it surprising is every time it's been said to me, it was an unsolicited statement. It came out of the blue. I'm always like, okay, cool, I guess. But internally, I'm like, What the hell is this all about? Were they doing me a service by being my friend back then? Or do they think I'm such a shitty person that now that I've gone and lost weight, I'm going to cut and run on all my friends from over the years? Again, to be clear, I don't think anyone's trying to be mean, but it certainly could be worded better. Or frankly, not said at all. Just like the line, "Wow, you look so good now," isn't meant to say because you looked like shit before, but that's kind of what you're saying. One thing I struggle with every day is trying to not let things like this bother me. It's really hard. When you were as overweight as I was for so long, it's very hard to change one's mindset. Again, I know people say things all too often, and they mean well, but fail to account for the reverse interpretation. Take the completely unrelated to weight loss statement we have all used at some point or another when something bad has happened to someone we know. Everything happens for a reason, we say. Hell, I've said it and meant it in good light or to be supportive, but now realize just how pissed it can make someone. When the line has been used on me, I too often want to say back, "Please explain to me the reason this horrible thing has happened to me." I realize unless the person is a complete jerk, they didn't mean it that way, but it's how it can be perceived. Or take the line that drives me crazy when I'm trying to go out to dinner alone. "Are you waiting for someone?" I don't know a server or a host who means it with ill will, but man, can that line make a person feel like shit, especially when you're just learning how to get comfortable with dining alone. These are all just examples I've experienced where one says something and it can be interpreted many different ways. I mention them not to criticize anyone, but to inform and share others about my perspectives and the perspectives of others. We all need to think about what we say to each other every day. I know I've struggled with this myself. I tend to be too blunt at times and know I need to work on this every day. On top of that, I personally need to work on how I interpret things. This is not to say we should ignore or disregard how someone interprets something. At the end of the day, as the great Stoic Marcus Aurelius put it, it doesn't hurt me unless I interpret its happening as harmful to me. I can choose not to. When you see that friend who's transformed drastically since the last time you saw them, here is the best line to go with. Instead of, "You look great, have you lost weight?" Or "You look so good now," go with, "You look great." Full stop, period. End it there. You look great. Now let's talk about some of the physical changes and the impacts that they've had on me in more depth. Remember a bit ago when I mentioned how much better I fit in seats? Well, it turns out all that fat you lose is also padding. I struggle some days to sit for more than a few minutes at a time on hard surfaces. I notice every little perfection in some seating surfaces too because of the lack of padding. I can feel the coil on couches or in my car seat. Hell, after losing a bunch of weight, I was having a ton of back pain sitting at my desk at work till I realized it was because my desk chair doesn't sink down as much as it used to, so I had to readjust everything for better posture. For about 6 months, my breastbone was so sore from wearing a coat or using a seatbelt and having those things rub across it that it was to the point that I would have to hold my hand under the seatbelt while I drove just to keep it from rubbing. Speaking of fat loss, between that and the calorie deficit I was in the first winter after I had lost 100 pounds, I was so cold all the time. In an article titled "Eat Less, Feel Cold, but Live Longer," probably say calorie restriction researchers from Medical News Today, they write, the researchers also compared the core body temperatures of calorie-restricted group with that of 24 age-matched endurance athletes to see if it was just being lean as both groups were, or also following a calorie-restricted lifestyle that linked most strongly to lower core temperature. Fontana, who is also a senior investigator at the Istituto Superiore di Sante in Rome, Italy, said they found people doing calorie restriction had a lower average core body temperature by about 0.2 degrees Celsius, which sounds like a modest reduction, but is statistically significant and similar to the reduction we have observed in long-lived calorie-restricted mice. Hell, it was so bad I remember one late fall night at a bonfire at a friend's house, people noticed that I was visibly shivering. This past winter was much easier. I think the combo of knowing to dress warmer, but more importantly not being in a calorie deficit, and a result of just adjusting to things, made it not nearly as bad. But that first winter, man, did it suck at times. All right, let's talk about the giant elephant in the room now. If you have massive amount of weight to lose, I would say for me it was noticed when I hit 100 pounds lost, you will have excess skin and loose fat and skin in spots. There's nothing you can do to prevent this. It's going to happen. No fancy diet, cream, or supplement will change this. It has nothing to do with how fast you lose weight either. The only situation that can limit the excess skin in some spots is if you are doing resistance training and building muscle mass, which can fill in some of that space. But think about this. Muscle is far denser than fat, so think about how much muscle you would need to build to truly fill in all your loose skin. But in the end, the excess skin is still there. It's just what's filling it in. Honestly, I didn't even think about it when I started because I wasn't planning to lose as much weight as I did. But then one day I realized I was on the path to massive weight loss. And it was then that I realized loose skin was going to be a thing. I'd highly recommend you check out some of the older posts and videos from the Instagram, YouTube personality Obese to Beast. He's been very open about this issue, and his openness and his videos help me a lot with processing it. I get a question all the time. Are you going to get skin removal surgery? I can say with 99.9% certainty, I have no intention of getting surgery. The two primary reasons I wouldn't do surgery, besides not feeling like I need it, is first, I would likely have to pay for it out of pocket, and I'm too cheap to spend that kind of money for cosmetic reasons. To give you an idea, these are the general baseline costs for most common plastic surgeries for loose skin after weight loss, according to the American Society of Plastic Surgery. Lower abdominal lift, $8,000 to $15,000. Lower body lift, $7,900. Upper arm lift per arm, $3,500. Thigh lift per thigh, $4,500. Breast lift, $4,200. Plus additional facility costs and services related to surgery. Altogether, you could be easily looking at $30,000 or more dollars. I don't know about you, but I'm not looking for the bargain basement price surgeon either. Second, this is a very major surgery which comes with extensive recovery period and a lot of risk. This isn't a little in and out day surgery and back to work. When you watch shows like The Biggest Loser, they never show just how much happens between getting the surgery and recovery. It is a brutal procedure that I would not want to go through unless absolutely medically necessary. Truth be told, when I look in the mirror and I see it as a badge of honor representing the amazing accomplishment I've made. The only thing I do from time to time is wear compression gear, like Under Armour Heat Gear compression shirts as an undershirt. Think of this as Spanx for the torso. I'll be honest, I feel more confident when I put it on with a nice tight-fitting dress shirt. It just streamlines and tightens things up. Another big one that's a negative is your wardrobe as a whole will need to be replaced. That has been very painful for me. I've donated thousands and thousands of dollars in clothes, while at the same time having to buy all new clothes. Thankfully, being a more common size has helped me save a lot of money on buying the new clothes. Take, for example, my dress clothes and suits, much of which I still haven't parted with just because of the amount of money I spent on them. Hell, just in suits alone, I have well over $1,500 in clothes sitting in my closet. Let's not forget that $600 suit I mentioned that I wore for one wedding. I'll never fit in any of that again, and none of it can be tailored because of how much weight I've lost. It's not even outerwear. I needed all new underwear, lounge clothes like sweatpants, even shoes. Yes, my old shoes still do fit, but I'm down about a half a size, which is the tipping point between being a size 13 and a size 12 for me. Hell, my cycling shoes, which you want to be tighter than normal, I had to get a size 11. Here's one of the last and probably biggest surprises. When it comes to pants, I went from a size 44 to a size 32. What I never thought about was everything on the pants gets smaller. What do I mean? The pockets are way too small. I know I carry too much crap at times, but it's still so annoying. I can honestly say my pockets are at least half as big as they used to be. I never understood, for example, people complaining about the size of their phone and it fitting in their pockets until now. I just got a new larger iPhone 13 Pro, and it's frankly a little tight in my pants. It barely fits in some pairs. At my largest pant size, this would have been no issue at all. So heads up, when you downsize clothes, you will also need to downsize what goes in your pockets. This is just some of the things I've noticed, but there's more and more every day. As I said earlier, just know that you are not alone in your journey and your struggles. I will keep saying it. Not a single negative would change my choice to take on this challenge and make the giant transformation I've made. It was all worth it. Thank you for listening. Please join me again for future episodes. You can contact me at parachuteadvicepodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's all one word, parachuteadvicepodcast@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at parachuteadvice. Again, thank you for listening, and please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.